Richard Francis Cottingham is an American serial unaliver who was convicted in New York of 6 unalivings committed between 1972 and 1980, and convicted in New Jersey of 12 unalivings committed between 1967 and 1978. He was given 2 nicknames by the media, which were some of his unalivings he was convicted for included emulation. His confirmed unalivings resulted in 9 convictions and a further 8 confessions under non-prosecution agreements, leading to him serving multiple life sentences in New Jersey prisons. In 2009, decades after his first 5 unaliving convictions, he told a journalist he had committed at least 80 of women in various regions of the US. Richard Cottingham was born on the 25th of November 1946 in the Mott Haven neighborhood of the Bronx in New York City, the first of 4 children. In 1948, his family moved to Dumont, New Jersey, and in 1956 to Rivervale, New Jersey, where he began his fascination with bondage corn. According to Cottingham, he had a close relationship with his mother growing up, but reportedly had difficulty making friends as a teenager. In 1964, he graduated from Passaic Valley High School in Hillsdale, New Jersey. His graduation yearbook stated that he was a member of the school's cross-country and track team. After graduation, he worked for Metropolitan Life, where his father was vice president, starting in the mailroom at the firm's Manhattan headquarters and eventually becoming a mainframe computer operator upon taking computer courses. In October 1966, he became a computer operator for the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, where he worked until his 1980 arrest. At Blue Cross, he worked in an office with Rodley Alcala, who I've also made a video about on my YouTube channel. Neither claim to have been aware of each other, nor is there any evidence that they were familiar with each other prior to their arrests. On the 3rd of May 1970, Cottingham was married at Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Queens Village, Queens. He had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl with his wife. In April 1978, his wife filed for divorce on the grounds of abandonment and mental cruelty. His wife withdrew the petition upon his arrest in May 1980 and completed the divorce after his 1981 conviction. He was arrested on several lesser charges throughout his unaliving spree. Police weren't aware of his unalivings at the time, nor were they aware that a serial unaliver was active in the tri-state area. On the 3rd of October 1969, he was charged and convicted of drunk driving in New York City and was fined $50. On the 21st of August 1972, he was charged and convicted of shoplifting at a Stearns department store in Paramus, New Jersey, and was sentenced to pay a $50 fine again or 10 days in jail. On the 4th of September 1973, he was arrested again in New York City for Neither complainant appeared in further proceedings, however, and the case was dismissed. Once again, on the 12th of March 1974, he was arrested in New York City for Once again, the victim didn't appear in further proceedings and the case was dismissed. In the early morning hours of the 22nd of May 1980, then in his 30s, he picked up 18-year-old worker Leslie Ann Odell, who was soliciting on the corner of Lexington Avenue and 25th Street in Manhattan. They checked into the Hasbrook Heights Quality Inn at room 117. He offered Odell a massage and she rolled onto her stomach. Straddling her back, he drew a knife and put it to her throat as he snapped a pair of handcuffs on her wrist. He began torturing her. She later testified that he said, At one point, Odell reached under the bed for a gun that he'd threatened her with, thinking it was real and attempted to shoot him with it. When it didn't fire, Cottingham came at her with a knife. She screamed. The screams brought motel employees to the room and they summoned police. He was arrested in the hallway at gunpoint. When he was arrested, he had in his possession the charges listed in his New Jersey indictment included in April 1978, after his wife initiated divorce proceedings, he kept a locked room in the basement apartment of the house which they lived in Lodi, New Jersey. Following his 1980 arrest, police found in the locked room and in the trunk of his car personal effects which they traced to several of his victims. During his 1981 trial, 3 additional surviving abduction victims testified along with O'Dell against Cottingham in court, claiming that they had also been essayed and tortured by him. 2 of the victims, Susan Geiger and Karen Schlitt, identified Cottingham in a police lineup. He was ultimately convicted of 3 of the cases, Schlitt, Geiger, O'Dell, and acquitted of 1, Wisefield. 22-year-old pregnant waitress Karen Schlitt met Cottingham at 9 p.m. on the 22nd of March 1979. Schlitt had exited a 3rd Avenue bar and made her way back to her apartment. She was picked up by Cottingham and driven down to Route 80 in New Jersey after being forced to ingest sleeping pills. Near the Ledgewood Terrace apartments, in a parking lot, a patrolman had discovered her motionless body in the following morning. She had been essayed by Cottingham, who abandoned her in a sewer. 19-year-old worker Susan Geiger was approached and propositioned by Cottingham on the night of the 10th of October 1979 in Manhattan between Broadway and 7th Avenue on West 47th Street. Although Susan informed Cottingham that she had reservations for the remainder of the evening, she left him her contact information at the Alpine Hotel. The subsequent evening, Cottingham called her and asked her for a date at midnight. He picked up Susan in his vehicle before plying her with a number of drugged drinks. Susan would later awaken, covered in her own blood, in room 28 of the Airport Motel in South Hackensack, New Jersey. She had been tortured by Cottingham. In addition, he had beaten her multiple times with a garden hose and torn her gold earrings out of her ears. On the 12th of May 1980, worker Pamela Winesfield was found beaten up in a parking lot in Teaneck, New Jersey. According to police and medical reports, Wisenfield's attacker bit her multiple times. After meeting Cottingham, she had been drugged and brutally beaten, suffering several injuries all over her body. After being found, Teaneck police took her to the hospital. Cottingham claims to have started unaliving as an adolescent and has claimed to have unalived as many as 100 women. He often saw workers in their late teens to mid-20s and is believed to have unalived people in Florida, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Baltimore. He would approach his victims in bars, drug them, take them to a remote location, and would bind, gag, torture, and stab them before unaliving them by strangulation or asphyxiation. He took trophies like jewellery and other personal items belonging to his victims. Over the course of 2 separate New Jersey trials in 1981 and 1982, Cottingham was convicted in 3 non-fatal assaults, Schlitt, Geiger, and O'Dell, and the unalivings of 2 women, Marion Carr and Valerie Street, which occurred in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. At approximately 7 a.m. on the morning of the 16th of December 1977, the body of X-ray technologist Marion Mazzie Carr, 26, was found between a parked van and a chain-link fence in Little Ferry, New Jersey. She was still wearing her white nurse's uniform, but her shoes were missing. She was last seen on the 15th of December in the parking lot of the Ledgewood Terrace apartments, where Cottingham and his wife had previously lived. Cottingham kidnapped her from the apartment complex and took her to a Quality Inn in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. Once she was inside, Cottingham beat, bit, slashed, and arred her. She had been restrained and strangled with a ligature. Afterward, Cottingham dumped her in the parking lot of the Quality Inn not far from the Ledgewood Terrace apartments. She exhibited handcuff-related bruises on her wrists, ankles, as well as remnants of adhesive tape on her mouth. Cottingham was convicted of her unaliving on the 12th of October 1982. On the 5th of May 1980, the body of Valerie Ann Street, 19, an S-worker, was found by a motel worker at the same Quality Inn where Cottingham had dumped Carr's body, in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. Using an alias, Street had checked into room 132 with Cottingham, who unalived her and stuffed her body under the bed for housekeeping to find. Investigators discovered Street handcuffed with 2 ligature marks on her throat. They also determined that she'd been gagged with white adhesive tape. 1 fingerprint belonging to Cottingham was recovered from the ratchet mechanism of the handcuffs left behind on Street. He was convicted of her unaliving on the 12th of June 1981. In a single 1984 trial, Cottingham was convicted in the unalivings of 3 women, which occurred in New York City between 1979 and 1980. He was convicted of their unalivings on the 9th of July 1984. Staff at the Travel Lodge Motor Inn in New York City, New York, made a call to the nearby fire department on the 2nd of December 1979 around 9 a.m. The call was made as a result of the personnel discovering significant smoke inside room 417. A Do Not Disturb sign was hanging from the door latch of the room, which had been rented by a Carl Wilson since the 29th of November 1979. 2 naked female bodies were discovered by firefighters on 2 different beds. Prior to their unalivings, the women were brutalised and their unaliver burned their bodies. Both women's hands had been severed and the unaliver also beheaded them. The missing body parts were never found. A later autopsy revealed that both women had been tortured and essayed while still alive for several days. Dida Gudrazi, 22, an Iranian immigrant who worked as a worker, was identified shortly afterwards. The other woman remains unidentified and is estimated to be between aged 16 and 22. She is referred to as Manhattan Jane Doe. In a 2009 interview, Cottingham admitted to the unalivings and claimed that he severed the heads and hands of the women to prevent their identification, as he was acquainted with Gudrazi and had been seen with her in the bar the night before. Mary Ann Jean Rayner, 25, was discovered on the 15th of May 1980 at the Seville Hotel in New York City, New York. Investigators discovered that Rayner's attacker had cut her throat and removed both of her breasts. The unaliver had left her breasts on the headboard of the bed. Her body had been set on fire as part of the perpetrator's attempt to get rid of evidence. After his initial convictions, Cottingham pleaded his innocence and for decades insisted that he'd been framed, until admitting in 2009 that he'd actually perpetrated the 5 homicides. In 2000, a detective with the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, BCPO, Robert Ancelotti, was tasked with reviewing a series of cold cases from the 1960s and 1970s. He believed that Cottingham could be responsible for one or more of those crimes and so began to interview him in 2003. In 2010, Cottingham pleaded guilty to a 1969 unaliving. Then in charge for immunity for prosecution starting in 2014, Cottingham confessed to unaliving 3 teenage girls. The BCPO The 3 cold case unalivings with an agreement from the victims' families and evidence corroborating the confessions, but for several years kept the secret from the public to keep Cottingham talking about the other cases. In December 2019, forensic historian and author Peter Vronsky, on the eve of publishing the revelation in his 2nd edition of, publicised the confessions with the BCPO cooperation. Ancelotti and the BCPO subsequently confirmed on the 3 unalivings. In April 2021, Cottingham confessed to an unsolved 1974 double unaliving in Montevideo, one of New Jersey's most notorious cold cases. The confession was extracted by Ancelotti weeks before his retirement and was facilitated by Vronsky and by Jennifer Weiss, the daughter of Dida Gudrazi, one of Cottingham's later victims. Vronsky and Weiss had been meeting with Cottingham in a prison since the spring of 2017, counselling him to make the confession. In March 2023, Ancelotti elicited another confession from Cottingham, the unaliving of 17-year-old who vanished in 1967. Mary Ann Salas, 17, disappeared at the end of a shift at 9 p.m. on the 24th of January 1967 from a ShopRite store at 330 Essex Street in Hackensack, New Jersey. Her body was found 3 months later on the 20th of April in the Passaic River in Hawthorne, New Jersey. She had been strangled. Police concluded that she had been unalived somewhere else and thrown into the river. There was no sign of SA. Nancy Bubby Shiva Vogel, 29, a married mother of 2, was found unalived in her car, bound and naked in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey on the 30th of October 1967. She'd been last seen 3 days earlier in Little Ferry, where she'd left home to play bingo with friends at a local church. Instead, Vogel chose to do her shopping in a mall in Bergen County. Cottingham met Vogel at the shopping centre and kidnapped her. He took her to a field in Montevideo and strangled her there. Vogel and Cottingham were acquaintances and he was convicted of her unaliving on the 25th of August 2010. Jacqueline Leah Jackie Harp, 13, vanished on the 17th of July 1968 in Midland Park, New Jersey, after she failed to come home from a band rehearsal at school. The next morning, on the 18th of July, her body was discovered at Goffey Brook. She had been beaten about the face and had been strangled with a leather strap from her flag sling. Police believed that the attack was actually motivated despite the fact that she hadn't been aired since her clothes were in disarray. Cottingham claimed he attempted to persuade Harp to get into his car, but she resisted. He then drove his car in front of Harp, stopped and walked over to her. Cottingham caught up with Harp despite her attempts to flee, dragged her into the cluster of bushes and unalived her. Irene Blaze, 18, was reported missing on the 7th of April 1969. On the 8th of April, she was discovered face down in 4 feet of water in Saddle River, New Jersey, strangled with a chain from a crucifix she was wearing. Cottingham confessed that he saw Blaze shopping in Hackensack, New Jersey, and convinced her to join him for a drink. Taking a cab to another location, Cottingham and Blaze spent some time together, after which Cottingham offered to bring Blaze back to the bus station. He then drove Blaze to a remote location against her will before airing and unaliving her. On the 13th of July 1969, at approximately 8 p.m, Denise Falaska, 15, left her residence at Bergeline Avenue in Gloucester, New Jersey, on her way to meet friends in Westwood, New Jersey. At 11 p.m, she was scheduled to be back home but never arrived. At around 9 p.m, witnesses claimed to have seen her heading along Old Hook Road in Emerson in the direction of Westwood. Her body was found on the side of Westminster Place in Saddlebrook, New Jersey on the 14th of July. She was, according to Cottingham, walking down the side of the road in Emerson when he pulled up next to her and offered her a ride. Shortly after, he drove to the parking lot of his former school, where he forced her to perform oral S on him. Dissatisfied with the sexual experience, he unalived her. On the 9th of August 1974, Lorraine Marie Kelly, 16, and Mary Ann Pryor, 17, left North Bergen, New Jersey, with plans to go shopping in the Garden State Plaza in Paramus, New Jersey. Her boyfriend left the two at the bus stop on Broad Street in Ridgefield, New Jersey. They intended to hitchhike from there. Their bodies were found on the 14th of August in a wooded location close to Richmond Gardens Complex in Mortvale, New Jersey. They were naked and bound to one another at the wrists and ankles while lying face down next to each other. They had been beaten and hard. The ligature marks on their necks suggested that they had been strangled as well. Both had cigarette burns. Cottingham was convicted of both their unalivings on the 27th of April 2021. In court, Cottingham admitted to kidnapping the girls and then tying them up and ironing them both in a motel room. He unalived them by drowning them in the bathtub. On the 26th of August 2022, with a non-prosecution agreement, officials in Rockland County, New York, corroborated and accepted Cottingham's confession in the 1970 unaliving of 29-year-old Lorraine McGraw. Cottingham's additional confession to a 1974 unaliving was discounted by Rockland County Police. In June 2022, Cottingham was arraigned from his prison hospital bed for the 1968 unaliving of Diane Cusick. Authorities believed it to be, thus far, the oldest criminal case to be solved and prosecuted by direct DNA evidence. He pleaded guilty in a court appearance on the 5th of December and also officially admitted unaliving 4 other women during 1972 and 1973 in Long Island, New York: Mary Beth Haynes, Laverne Moy, Sheila Hyman, and Maria Emerita Rosado Neves. Diane Marine Cusick, 23, a Long Island dance teacher, was found unalived on the 16th of February 1968 in the back of her car, a 1961 Plymouth Valiant, outside the Green Acres Mall in Valley Stream, New York, with adhesive tape around her mouth and neck. She had been beaten, hard, and strangled. Her hands had defense wounds. DNA discovered at the crime scene was extracted and it matched a sample retrieved from Cottingham. Near the Green Acres Mall, there was a drive-in theatre that Cottingham frequently visited. Authorities believed Cottingham approached Cusick while pretending to be a mall security guard. On the 1st of March 1970, a group of hikers came across a young woman's naked body in the woods to the west of Tweed Boulevard in South Nyack, New York. The FBI identified her as Lorraine Montalvo McGraw, 26, who lived in Long Island and had been missing since the 27th of February 1970. She had a history of drug and possession offences, many of them were listed under false names. On the 26th of August 2022, Cottingham confessed to unaliving her. The body of Mary Beth Haynes, 21, was discovered on the 10th of May 1972 near a creek in Roxville Center, New York. She had cuts on her face and neck from being strangled. Haynes, who experienced grand mal seizures and had been diagnosed with epilepsy, vanished on the 5th of May as she boarded a bus to travel to a nearby dance. He claimed to have thrown her body from Rockville Center Peninsula Boulevard Bridge. Laverne Moy, 23, of St. Albans, Queens, was discovered in Rockville Center Creek. On the 20th of July 1972, she had been unalived by strangulation. Cottingham claimed that he'd thrown her body off the same bridge where he'd previously dumped Haynes' body. Sheila Hyman, 33, was found bludgeoned and stabbed to unaliving in her home in North Woodsmere, New York on the 20th of July 1973. When her husband returned after a trip to the department store that morning, he discovered her dead in the master bedroom. None of the rooms outside of the bedroom showed evidence of struggle, and none of Hyman's neighbours reported anything strange around the time of her unaliving. 18-year-old Maria Emerita Rosado Neves, a native of Puerto Rico, was found dead in Montana, New York on the 27th of December 1973. She was strangled to unaliving in a weeded area close to the bus stop on Ocean Parkway. She was discovered by park maintenance personnel wrapped in a grey blanket and discovered in plastic bags. On the 7th of October 1974, 15-year-old Lisa Thomas left her home and walked to the Nanette Mall at 3:30 p.m. intending to buy a blouse. About 700 feet from her Nanette, New York home, her body was found by her father the following morning in the woods behind the mall. She was blindfolded with a crimson rag that she had in her purse, and her head had been bashed in. She hadn't been SA'd. On the 26th of August 2022, Cottingham admitted to unaliving both her and McGraw. Despite his confession, the investigation into her unaliving is still ongoing, and he was not charged with the crime. This is because authorities didn't agree or take Cottingham's statements regarding Thomas seriously.